Brendan is a digital book lover, award-winning dungeon master, generalist nerd, and spreadsheet enthusiast. He started in digital publishing as an intern 9 years ago and never looked back. After working in ebook production and development, he now manages Harlequin's relationships with online vendors, consults in metadata adoption and use, and manages search advertising on a large book display ad service. In his spare time, i.e. train rides to work, he helps friends make laptop role-playing books. Keely is the editorial assistant for HQN and Graydon House. She works as a liaison between the editorial and digital assets management team. She hails from Toronto and began her career working at Kobo in publishing operations, moving to Harlequin in early 2016. Keely holds a BA in Books and Media Studies and English from the University of Toronto and completed the publishing program at Ryerson University.
So we're here to talk about metadata and some of the systems that we've been working on at Harlequin and workflows and sort of how we've changed the way that we think about it and changed the way that we do things a little bit at Harlequin. So metadata, agility, and consensus, these are some buzzwords. Agility meaning that we've just been iterating over time on a few different projects and scaling from pretty small things to some bigger things that Keely's going to talk about in more detail. I'm going to focus on just how we built consensus and got people excited and to make changes within the organization. As Tom mentioned, I started out in digital production at Harlequin. I was assigning ISBNs, I was managing schedules and managing a lot of the nuts and bolts of what went out to retailers, and now I get to work with the retailers and from a sales perspective and a relationship perspective, which I really enjoy. And I think what this has led me to do is think about metadata in different ways for different providers, for different recipients, as the BISG has been talking about lately. And I think that different perspectives are a pretty critical part of having good and robust metadata. So I'll summarize a little bit about how we've been building that within Harlequin as a whole, how we've been identifying which challenges are important and which ones we can work on later on down the road, how we got people excited, how we got people talking about metadata, how we started to iterate on some of the things that we've accomplished, and how we've been working towards something pretty big. So let me describe a situation that might sound familiar. You are potentially hearing a lot about metadata. You want to use it, you want to do it better, you want to do it faster, you want to get better results out of it, but you're not really sure how. You may feel like this dark screen alone or unclear about the path that you can take. You can't really see what's ahead of you or what challenges that await you. Or you can see the challenges very clearly, like these cat's eyes glaring at you from out the midst of darkness. You know that the challenges are there, but it feels maybe too big, too scary to surpass. But there are tools to help you. There is a light that you can find. There is a way forward, even though it might require an initial step on an uncertain path. Starting into the path can quickly show you what more obstacles can lie in your path, but can also show you goals. And the roadmap can speak to what is actually attainable that you can achieve. So how do you get from the darkness into sort of a more concrete path? And for me, it's all just about who's around you. It's the people. This is a group of people excited, silhouetted against the sun. And I think you need to make allies, and I think you need to empower people to then carve out their own journey and their own path on this and let it go, and then trust them that they're also going to be pushing things forward in a way that is meaningful for them, but also for the organization. So eventually, hopefully, you can get out into the light like this tree epically shining in the sun. And maybe at the end of this journey, or hopefully even the start of a new journey. So the question really is, how do you go from one to the other? How do you go from not really knowing or understanding what your challenges are to having a clear idea of where you want to go and where you want to move forward? So I think, like any journey, there are many possible paths. The one that I'm speaking to represents us as a large trade commercial publisher. We publish a lot of genre fiction, a lot of romance at Harlequin, as everybody knows. We also have a broadening list of nonfiction, of literary fiction, of other commercial types of fiction. Biographies, memoirs. I think we're doing a book of poetry soon. So there's many different challenges that we have that may not be indicative of your organization, but we'd be happy to talk about those afterwards or offline later. So let's talk a little bit about how we move forward. And the eyes, again, represent challenges that we faced initially when we were starting down this path. The icons on the screen represent like a hands glowing in darkness. There's a globe. There's a boot with wings on it, and the number 1. And what these to me represent is that we have many, many people working on Harlequin's metadata. A lot of editors assign titles, for example, keywords. They write copy for descriptions, and they work in tandem all across the world. We have international teams that can be working on the same books in Toronto, in London, in potentially Sydney, in New York, and other places. We have a very fast-paced schedule. We publish hundreds of books every single month, and it can be difficult to give each one the care and attention it deserves. And often we have kind of a one-and-done mindset about things where we assign keywords once, and nobody really has time to go back and think about new ones to add, or does more research, or maybe the copy needs to be revised because it's not quite resonating, because there's just more things coming down the pipeline. Other challenges include, we have many different systems. So this icon is a bit of a flow chart representing different screens attached together. There's an icon of an hourglass reflecting time. There's one of a bridge with a gap, and there's one of a dollar sign representing our resources. So the many systems we have require us to assign keywords in one area, BISACs in a completely different area, a back cover in a totally different system. They don't really talk to each other very well. They haven't in the past anyway. And they were also designed for print-focused aspects of our business, to the point where the scheduling tool that pushes out a lot of the metadata really actually reflects Post-it notes that used to be posted on a wall and where people would move them around. We have these cards in a scheduling tool, and it's kind of still this legacy that has permeated through the business. As well, a lot of the solutions that were quickly implemented when digital was growing rapidly don't really work anymore. They were not designed for keyword assignment, and they were not very user-friendly at all. UX was a big problem. We have a lot of knowledge gaps. There's a lot of people with different degrees of familiarity with metadata, with optimizing metadata particularly, and so it's been an education process in getting everybody up to the same page and giving them some tools that they can use to help themselves learn and teach themselves. As well, resources are always a challenge, especially when we have shrinking digital revenues, like a lot of places do. The ebook market is declining. Everybody knows this. A lot of people are doing whatever they can to find solutions to sort of stem that. And so getting buy-in to make investments and spend resources in this can be difficult. But we also have advantages. The torch is back on the screen again. We have many hands, and many hands is actually a good thing in my opinion. We have a lot of different perspectives on books, a lot of global perspectives, which speaks again to the international teams. And I think all these perspectives are need to build metadata holistically and consider many downstream recipients of our data, from the customers to the libraries to the digital vendors to independent booksellers to many others. The international teams, again, also provide perspective, but they also may already have their own solutions that are working for them that we could adopt without necessarily having to reinvent the wheel every single time, or that can inspire us to think about things a bit differently, that we can interpret and fit into the systems that we do have in place that people are using. And I think there actually has been a lot of buzz around metadata. There's been a lot of discussions here for many years at the BookNet Tech Forum, but also the BSG has been holding summits on getting recipients and providers together and working together to adopt new standards. And I think this has permeated down into Harlequin a lot because they see people talking about it, and then they start asking us questions. And it's really exciting when it's not just the metadata wonks in a company who are actively talking about it and finding you in the kitchen and asking you what keywords that they should put on their books. So what actions did we take? The treasure map, again, back on the screen, representing our roadmap. So we formed a task force in 2016, and now you might be saying, wait, task forces where things in publishing go to die, which is often true, unfortunately. But and it actually took us a few times to get this to stick. It was not our first attempt at doing this, but we got a multidisciplinary group. We started, it was from myself and my manager in sales that wanted to do this in a big part because it's such an important aspect of us being able to sell our books online. And we brought in people from marketing and editorial who were doing a lot of the work, marketing who wasn't, but we really wanted to get their input because they have a lot of more insight on customer behavior that maybe editors are not really thinking about. And we then later expanded that because we quickly realized we needed help in getting good analysis on some of the testing initiatives that we were doing, and also implementing solutions. So we needed some people from IT. So we grew from about 5 people to now we're at about 10 or 12 people that work on this task force. And this is, except for the people who have now been dedicated as an IT resource, none of these people directly correlates to their job. They're not metadata people. They are people with other responsibilities where this is just one element. So we started brainstorming testing initiatives, things that we could start small and then scale up. So let's try adding subtitles to one particular genre of romance in a very accurate, descriptive way that doesn't break a lot of standards and suggestions by standards bodies, but we're easy to execute and things that we can measure quickly just to see if page view traffic changed, if sales ideally increased. And this led to, when we brought in some people from a research and analytics side of things, it quickly led to a gap analysis of tens of thousands of records to see maybe these BISAC codes that we had for a lot of older books that were published before 2010 were out of date or more general and could be changed ad hoc. And that's where IT came in, so because it's not easy for one person to go in and edit 10,000 records. This led to us talking about it with our IT group at a regular ops meeting every single week. It was just, what are they working on? How much time do they have to commit to this? That's fine if it has to wait. What things can we do right now? What things can we push to keep doing later on? And this led them to start to realize that there were gaps in the systems related to data consolidation where titles might be different in different places, as Keely's going to talk about. And it also gave us a perspective on what they thought was easy for us to implement in terms of testing and analysis. Keely and I also started joining industry metadata committees. We're on the BISG keywords, BISACs, and metadata groups. We helped a little bit with the keywords best practice update that was done by Carolyn Hayes and that team. We started then writing our own in-house best practices documents, which we made available to everyone. We kind of hit them over the head with them a few times. We started presenting them, getting their input, telling them that this is the kind of thing that we like to think about and do differently with metadata. And most importantly, then we started to listen to what they had to say in return and to the pain points that they had in actually implementing these best practices. So when it's really difficult to find the right keyword that you want because the systems are so old, and that's something that if we want them to do it better, then it's just something we have to fix. And then it was easier then to just start snowballing this and go back to IT and say, these are the things that are really important to our users. And that's what led us to people really wanting to make change and how we got buy-in corporately to spend these resources and how we got buy-in from a lot of people to try to do it a little bit better. And this led us to a really grander vision of one system to kind of rule them all, to handle all of our metadata assignment, and even just a view-only mode for a lot of people who might not be able to touch it directly, but might want to just know, what are we actually feeding out? I see that there's this error online, and I really don't know what the source of it is. So it was really quite amazing to see the excitement. Then we went from testing new strategies, sharing results, presenting our own best practices, and listening to pain points, and then convincing people that Good metadata also applies not just to ebook editions, but also print and audio versions sold online, which helped fix some of the issues that we faced. And so then the last part, which Keely will go over, is how we then open the doors and let even more people get involved and excited, and start to continue to educate them. So in summary, I want to say that you're not alone in this. You might think you are, even if you're in a small organization. There's a room full of people here that you can talk to about metadata. There's people that will talk your ear off about it. I'm one of them. Go on Twitter. You can find us online. You can reach out. We can have coffee. You'd be surprised that if you're looking for allies, that there are people who are not necessarily knowledgeable about metadata, but have good skills that will apply, people with web design and computer programming, SQL analysis and research, or just generally critical thinking, good vocabularies, people who love to read quickly and know what's available in the market, who write marketing copy that might be actually useful in your keywords or in your online descriptions to help convert the sale. People who are determined and focused on solutions, and people who just like to work together and celebrate successes together. So I think that's about it. Just basically try things and get used to failing, because that's how we learn and do things better. So thank you.
Hi. So you might be wondering why somebody in editorial is working with metadata. At our company, most of our metadata comes from editorial. We're providing the BISACs, we're providing the keywords, we're providing the subtitles, because the editors are the ones that know the most about the book. And of course, this can cause issues because they might not necessarily always know what's trending right at this time, which is why the portal that I'm about to discuss that we created was going to be so essential to kind of especially merging our marketing as well as our editorial teams. All right, so after we had all this talk about making consensus and getting all our teams to talk together across the departments, the next step was to find a way for our many internal systems to more fluidly talk to one another. We had a systems for our sales team, we had a system for our marketing team, and the various systems that people would be looking at for digital assets management, for example, might be looking at something different than what we were putting in our other system called HERS, which is where the editors would actually schedule things, and sometimes they would have contradictory information. And creating a portal where all these various data points could meet and be checked and updated. And the goal was to create a portal that would not only increase the ease by which we updated our metadata, but would revolutionize the way that we can reach customers and market our books, maximize data integrity, and optimize data at a scale that would impact the entire company. Oops, okay. So our objective was to create a comprehensive centralized module specifically for the metadata, for marketing and editorial to edit, but other teams would be able to view and potentially edit as well, depending on what access we deemed was necessary, to manage the Onyx metadata for both the title and the ISBN. And what I mean by that is because we have so many books, we'd often have a lot of backlist books or multiple versions of a book going out at various times. So you might want to update metadata for the entire title that's been issued for the past 10 years, or you might want to do it for just one ISBN. Being able to make that a lot easier, because as it is now, it's difficult to do it for just the one or the whole, and making it more concise. The ability to view what has been previously sent in Onyx and what's going to be sent. So you can see people, for example, in marketing can see any upcoming changes we have and confer on that. To be able to view, search, and update the different metadata components of titles. To have metadata that is complete and accurate and delivered to retailers on time and that meets industry standards. So before we could do any of this, creating this grandiose system, we had to do a bunch of preparation in terms of what our systems were currently even capable of providing in terms of that data. So the first step was updating the backlist titles, which Brendan talked a little bit about, but we went through our very extensive backlist. We published upwards of 100 books a month, and we've been publishing for a very long time. So as you can imagine, our backlist is extremely extensive. So we identified what our priority titles were, but also other books in general, and we added missing data elements like BISACs, keywords, and connections. And when I say connections, I mean where a book is in a series, if it's number 1, number 2, number 3. That's so critical for people finding other books that they like when they're searching online. So we did a massive update on that. The next step was consolidating keywords. So we did a massive review of our keyword system. part of that was creating a keywords portal, because we needed that to exist before we could move it into a larger system as a whole, because the way we had added keywords to titles at that time was archaic and difficult to understand. Part of this, creating this portal, is that we had already previously done research into what made effective keywords, which we examined in a prior period, and we did a lot of testing on what makes a good keyword. Is it trending? Is it also relevant to the book? Is it a temporary word? Is it something that's permanent to the story as a whole? And really trying to make that as diverse as possible, and our portal tried to keep that in mind. And I'll get into that in a second. And then the last thing is integrating subtitles into our system, which I know is a controversial topic, but we designed a feature in our existing system that'll identify the subtitle that actually goes on a book versus the promotional subtitle, which would go out in the Onyx feed and would show up on an online retailer. And you could have one or the other. So this is kind of a glimpse of what the primary keywords portal looked like, and this would, of course, later be updated in our new metadata portal as a whole. So we added a function to search for a keyword by different buckets. We want to encourage people to pick something that was a genre, a subgenre, a character, a setting, a mood, a time period, and that way you could have a more clear, like you were getting a bigger, clearer picture. It wasn't just a bunch of things about the character, for example, and that way each time somebody filled out metadata for a title, it'd be a more accurate picture. You could add copy over keywords from previous titles by the author. You could copy over keywords from literally any author or title of your choosing. You could look at the Onyx feed, what's going out, what has gone out, and you could add and remove as you saw fit. So just adding a lot more accessibility for that. And then for the subtitles, this is just a little bit of what it looked like. So we've got your marketing subtitles that help readers actually find books online, and then the traditional ones that expand upon what the book's actually about. So we had to make a plan for actually building this interface. So we had several waves of development. The first being outlining what we wanted this portal to actually be and define that kind of scope. And also identify what elements we wanted involved for data in the actual system. Then we developed it, and then we started testing the system itself. And then we had the first delivery, and then there's going to be a wave 2 where we add all the things in that we didn't have time to add in the first wave, and it's going to be a constant development from there where we're going to be doing various waves of testing, but we've reached stage 1. So what I'm going to show next is a little bit of a picture of what this portal actually looks like. I'd like you to keep in mind that it is rough. This is not how it's actually going to be designed, and it's, work in progress. So one of the other things we had to keep in mind is when we were adding and identifying what data elements we wanted present in this portal, we had to, of course, keep in mind, did it add business value? Was it important to all of the users and everyone accessing the metadata portal? If it was just one data element that was only going to be useful to a small subset of marketers, it didn't make sense to include it in this big, massive update, and maybe we would be able to add it later on if need be. Did it have a high impact on the brand? Once again, of course, we were limited by the amount of time we had for the first wave and the second wave, and that was a big part of how we separated things. And that would, of course, also impact the level of dependency. For example, I'll explain a little bit more later. So here were the key data elements that we identified that should be represented in the portal. The top being this top 2 rows and connections, which I've already explained. And you'd be able to both feed these out and edit them in the portal itself. And often some of these things were things that would get changed a lot, so it'll be really convenient to be able to update in a portal. For example, sometimes right up until the last minute we're changing the title or even the page count sometimes. And then, of course, it allows us to be more reactive on updating things like keywords and BISACs, especially for backlist titles. We can now easily go in and make those changes for titles. It's not one and done anymore. BCC, so that's the actual product description, the copy on the back of the book. We want to be able to differentiate between the online retailer copy and the copy that goes on the back of the book, because what people read online and how they buy online is completely different in the bookstore versus online and in digital. So we want to be able to tailor that to the retailer, and this system will allow us to do that. And review quotes, and when I say that, I don't mean like quotes from people that are reading it, actual reviewing magazines like Publisher Weekly. Publishers have the ability to feed that out, and right now our ability to do that is sketchy at best, and this system would really help us assist that. And other things like cover embargoes or even copy embargoes, should you want to, just an ease of a click of a button and suddenly the cover is not being sent out, or is being sent out, and you can even send up a timed thing for when the title will release. And this is just a little bit of what it looks like. So this is the actual title page for a book. And so you'll see that there's the keywords there as well. So there's the keywords update for this. Now would also have the ability, so you'd go into the various tabs and you'd be able to edit the data from there. But for the keywords, for example, you'd have the ability to bulk upload for titles. So you could add a bulk of keywords for over 100 titles in one go, instead of adding the keywords to a title one by one, which is what we've had to do in the past. And we could also pull reports from this. And we could add, say marketing wants to bulk upload something, they just want to bulk upload a trending keyword to a bunch of titles that they know is applicable. For example, if puppies is trending, they could identify any book that had the animal Balzac and then copy puppies to all the books that had the animal Balzac that also had puppy in the book, which we'd be able to search because our system would be able to mine that kind of data. We'd also have a search screen. It would be another place that you could pull content and export content from. And you could search by any various metadata field that if you wanted to search by Balzac, if you wanted to like search books that had a certain keyword, you could run as many different kinds of reports as you wanted to, because all that data is now living in one system. All right. So related titles. So when I said that we publish a lot of books, I mean like there's going to be multiple editions of one book, like multiple editions. So you can see the ebook edition, the audiobook edition, the print edition, the original hardcover edition, because we reissue things in so many different formats, but also potentially books by that author, books in that series. And we also added a function where you could copy the Balzacs from that title and search a title, and you could copy it, the Balzacs over, the keywords over, the reviewer quotes over, the connection over, and even the subtitle over. And we will potentially expand how much that it is, but it's just one click, and suddenly if you have a series and it's the same like metadata pretty much for the whole series, you can just add it in instead of having to re-add it in for every title. All right, so these are some of the things that are still under development. The reviewer quotes, which I've mentioned, the back cover copy, which I've also mentioned, and contributors as well. So all of these things, especially like for stuff like back cover copy and even connections, we need to be able to make sure that information going out is accurate, because it really seriously impacts how people search for our books, because back cover copy is metadata too. Those words are internalized by search engines, and so even the words that you've written in your copy are going to have impact on what people are searching. And in ways you should be putting keywords into your back cover copy as well, and you would want to do that more for online copy than you would for, say, print, where you wouldn't be slapping as many keywords into the back cover copy so that it would be showing up in a search. And that's one of the reasons why it is so important to tailor that to the various retailers. Thank you so much for coming.